Have you ever wondered what someone might do when every choice leads to death? Stella Goldschlag's story is one of the most disturbing moral dilemmas of the Holocaust. And before you judge her, hear what she faced. Stella was a young Jewish woman from Berlin. Beautiful, charismatic, talented. When the anti-Jewish laws tightened, she and her parents went into hiding. For a while, they survived on forged papers, constantly moving, constantly afraid. But one day, the Gestapo caught them. Stella was beaten so brutally that she lost consciousness. Then the officers made her an offer no human being should ever hear. Help us find Jews in hiding, or your parents will be deported to Auschwitz. Imagine that moment. What would you do if your family's life depended on a decision you never wanted to make? Stella agreed. Using her perfect German, her Aryan appearance, and her knowledge of Berlin's underground networks, she became an informant. The Nazis called her the blonde poison. She pointed out Jews in hiding, people just like she once was. Some estimate she helped capture hundreds. But here's the part many people don't know. Her parents were deported anyway. The Nazis lied to her from the beginning. So why did she keep collaborating? Was it survival? Trauma? Manipulation? Or had the violence broken something inside her? After the war, Stella was arrested by Soviet authorities. Survivors testified against her, calling her a traitor. She served time in prison, and even after her release, she lived a life marked by stigma, guilt, and psychological decline. She died decades later, still one of the most debated figures of the Holocaust. Stella's story forces us to confront a painful truth. In a world built on terror, some choices were not choices at all. And the line between victim and perpetrator wasn't always as clear as we want it to be. What do you think? Was Stella an accomplice, a shattered victim, or something far more complex? What if saving one group meant sacrificing another? Chaim Rumkowski faced a decision so horrifying that even today, historians still argue whether he was a monster or a man trapped in an impossible role. Rumkowski was the head of the Jewish council in the Łódź Ghetto. He believed one thing with absolute conviction. If the ghetto became economically useful, some Jews might survive. So he turned Łódź into a massive labor machine. Children worked, the elderly worked, everyone worked. For a time, it seemed to work. Łódź was not liquidated as quickly as other ghettos. Then, in 1942, the Nazis demanded the unthinkable. They ordered the deportation of the sick, the elderly, and the children. Rumkowski gathered the ghetto and delivered one of the most infamous speeches of the Holocaust. His voice shaking, he said, "Give me your children." He argued that sacrificing the weakest would save the strongest, that this was the only way to keep the ghetto alive. Imagine standing in that crowd, your child in your arms, and the man meant to protect you is asking you to give them up. Was this leadership or betrayal? Thousands of children were deported. None survived. And yet, the ghetto continued to function for 2 more years. Tens of thousands lived longer because of the system Rumkowski created. But in 1944, the Nazis liquidated Łódź anyway. Rumkowski was deported to Auschwitz, just like the people he once ruled over. He did not survive. So how should history remember him? As a collaborator who helped the Nazis, or as a man who made unbearable choices in a world where refusal meant instant death? What if surviving meant becoming someone others feared? In the Nazi camps, there was a role that turned prisoners into enforcers. They were called Kapos. Kapos were not Nazis. They were prisoners, just like everyone else. But they were given power over fellow inmates in exchange for privileges, extra food, or the promise of survival. Some were forced into the role, others accepted it to escape certain death. And once inside the system, the choices became darker. Kapos were ordered to maintain discipline, enforce labor, and sometimes punish other prisoners. Refusal often meant losing their position and being sent back to the ranks, where death was almost guaranteed. But here is where the story fractures. Some Kapos used their power to protect others. They shared food. They warned people before selections. They looked away when they could. Others became brutal. They beat, humiliated, and even killed fellow prisoners. Power, fear, and constant violence transformed them. So were Kapos victims trying to survive, or perpetrators who crossed a moral line? After liberation, this question followed them. Some Kapos were put on trial by fellow survivors. Some were punished, others disappeared into silence, carrying guilt that could never be measured in court. There is no single answer to the Kapos story. Each case was different, each decision shaped by hunger, terror, and the knowledge that mercy could mean death. The story of the Kapos forces us to confront one of the hardest truths of the Holocaust. Extreme systems do not only destroy lives, they corrupt morality itself. And in a world built on cruelty, survival sometimes demanded choices that no one should ever have to make. So ask yourself quietly, honestly, where would you draw the line? He believed obedience could buy time, time that might save lives. Moshe Merin made decisions that still divide historians to this day. Before the war, Merin was a businessman. Under Nazi occupation, he became the head of the Central Jewish Council in Eastern Upper Silesia, overseeing dozens of ghettos. From the start, he was convinced of one idea: usefulness meant survival. Merin pushed forced labor relentlessly: factories, workshops, quotas. He believed that if Jews were essential to the German war economy, deportation could be delayed. For a while, it seemed to work. Then came 1942. The deportations began. Merin helped organize transports to Auschwitz. He compiled lists, he enforced German orders, and he silenced warnings about what deportation really meant. Some accused him of lying to his own people. Others said he truly believed that cooperation would spare the majority. The moral line grew thinner with every train. Families begged, communities broke apart, and Merin continued to argue that sacrifice was necessary to save what remained. But history delivered a brutal verdict. In 1943, the Nazis turned on him. Moshe Merin was arrested and deported to Auschwitz. He was murdered there, just like the people whose fate he once helped decide. No protection, no exception. So, how should we remember Moshe Merin? As a collaborator who enabled destruction, or as a man trapped inside a system where refusal meant immediate death and compliance promised a fragile hope? He negotiated with the architects of genocide, while hundreds of thousands were being deported. Rudolf Kastner's story remains one of the most controversial chapters of the Holocaust. In 1944, Hungary's Jews were facing annihilation. Adolf Eichmann had arrived, and deportations to Auschwitz began at terrifying speed. Kastner was a lawyer and a Zionist leader. Instead of fleeing, he chose a path almost unimaginable. He entered direct negotiations with the Nazis. His goal, he claimed, was to save lives. The result was what became known as the Kastner train. A single train carrying about 1,600 Jews was allowed to leave Hungary and eventually reach safety in Switzerland. Among them were children, intellectuals, community leaders, and Kastner's own relatives. But the deal came at a terrible moral cost. While the train was being prepared, hundreds of thousands of Hungarian Jews were deported to Auschwitz. Kastner was accused of staying silent about what deportation truly meant. Critics argued that if people had known the truth, more might have resisted or tried to escape. Supporters claimed something very different. They said Kastner believed open resistance would only accelerate mass murder. That negotiation, secrecy, and selective rescue were the only tools left in a world ruled by terror. After the war, Kastner moved to Israel. There, he was accused of collaboration. A public trial followed, tearing the country apart. The court initially ruled against him, stating he had sold his soul to the devil. Before the verdict could be fully overturned on appeal, Rudolf Kastner was assassinated in 1957. So how should history remember him? As a man who saved 1,600 lives? Or as someone whose silence may have cost countless others?